Hey, what's up, guys? Checking in for another series of this vlog. We're going. I think this is maybe 4 days strong. So appreciate anyone who has checked out my videos. They've gotten a couple of them have gotten a handful of views, and boy, do I appreciate it because it makes me feel like it's worth doing, and like, hey, these are at least reaching somebody out there. And again, who knows? Hoping to put thoughts out there, information out there, and hear back from people. So eventually, hoping to garner enough um, viewing that people start to feel in like feel interested in um, engaging, interacting, giving feedback, that sort of deal. So, and who knows, maybe YouTube isn't the best format for that because, I know it's just sort of me talking to my phone here and putting it out in the world. So maybe once I get the hang of this thing and feel like I'm on a good track, I will maybe try a couple of different platforms out and see if and see if people appreciate that or if it opens up some interesting conversations. All that being said, the um, the title of this video is either going to be something along the lines of the one title will be how to clean up Seattle, or excuse me, the second title might be something along the lines of if I were king for a day. So we'll decide on the back end of this recording on what the proper title will be. But that being said, this was something I contemplated again as I've been learning and being exposed to some of these ideas on, hey, what makes a prosperous society and creates what pushes society in the opposite direction, right? And it's something that became abundantly clear in the last few years in the city that I grew up in, a town that I was always comfortable in, never thought bad about it or had any issues with it. And I think, maybe part of that was because it was a slow, gradual effect. Maybe part of it was that I was young, and maybe you don't necessarily notice certain things until you get a little older, become what some might call an adult. Um, so, but all that being said, in the last few years, especially, the city of Seattle has definitely taken a turn for the worst. It is, there's been a couple of local documentaries made. A local news station made one called Seattle is Dying, and what was the other one? The Heart of Seattle, or the Soul of Search for the Soul of Seattle, something along those lines. And they did a really great job highlighting, hey, this homeless epidemic, whatever you want to call it, huge homeless problem, huge drug problem, huge crime problem, and it's getting worse. It's not like a transitory deal. It's an issue, and it was actually part of it. It really got worse during the shutdowns of 2020 when the city put a moratorium on moving homeless people. So prior to that, it was getting kind of bad. You'd see under freeway passes or in certain parks, you'd see a big tent city and go, "Wow, that wasn't there last year or 6 months ago." But there were what's called the navigation team. And so, as a group of police officers and the Parks and Rec people would at least clear people out and move people around. So you felt like, yeah, even though it's not great, it's not an efficient system. Um, at least it gets taken care of to some degree. Well, they put a moratorium on that last year, and that allowed the problem to just go through the roof. And we live near Green Lake in Seattle, and the lake, which was once one of the gems of the town, which was beautiful, ended up having tents lining the lakefront real estate, and Um, just felt less safe to walk the lake alone, especially for ladies, things like that. So we ended up moving across the water, and it's a fair bit cleaner and safer and whatnot over here. So, all that being said, around the time I had thought, man, if I, what would I do to fix this place up? If it were, if I were king for a day, how would I fix Seattle? Because there's, and actually to point to those documentaries that were made that were highlighting all of the problems, which is a very good thing, right? You don't want to try and solve something till you really understand the problem. So to just jump straight to a solution is a bad idea because you haven't properly clarified what is the problem that we're trying to solve. So they did a really great job of solving or of identifying the problem and clearly outlining it and bringing the visuals to the citizens of this city. But the blind spot in their research or the conclusions that they came to was the solutions, right? So they clearly identified all of the issues with this town, but didn't talk about what it would take to solve it. Don't blame them. That's another big undertaking, and it's not necessarily self-evident or very straightforward. And so I don't blame these folks for not having some viable options. And that was actually something that I remember watching it and going, man, they've done such a good job identifying the problem, but so what, right? What's next? How are you going to bring us this pile of garbage and go, man, look at how horrible this is, but not really give us any viable solutions? And a few things that they kind of threw out was like more city facilities to house and rehabilitate homeless people or drug addicts or things along those lines, right? And so that just didn't seem like a satisfactory answer, especially because one of the huge problems that they talked about was one of the facilities in downtown Seattle that is a government-run house or kind of a flop house, whatever it is, and the place is completely overrun. People come and go as they please. It's one of the most dangerous areas in the city. So they highlighted that as one of the biggest problems, and then turned around and said, well, hey, imagine if we had a different facility. And you at a certain point have to realize, well, maybe that's not the right solution. And so I'm bearing the lead a bit here, but I guess I've jotted down, and I'm thinking of more as I go, but a few, and so I've jotted down 3 things that if I were king for a day and I could just with a stroke of a pen kind of make put my ideas into law or whatever it is, here's what I would do to start to turn around the situation. So first things first, well, I'll go over all 3. First, I would abolish the minimum wage. Second, I would abolish any zoning restrictions and all building codes. And third, I would then empower law enforcement to start enforcing the law. Right. And so the first one being abolishing the minimum wage maybe sounds a little counterintuitive. And also, how did these certain things connect? Well, for starters, a lot of, let's say, compassionate people who feel bad for people who are experiencing suffering or distress, or the people that we see out in the streets, feel bad because they would say that these people have no other options. And I would, in some cases, have to agree when their labor is being priced out of the market, right? So if someone's labor is only worth $10 an hour, but the city of Seattle says that it is illegal to employ them if you can't employ them for $15 an hour. Well, now it's illegal to employ that person, right? And so, not to say that that's the heart of the problem, right? That all these people who are on the street are there because they would otherwise be gainfully employed but have been priced out of the market. That's not to say that that's the case, because I know it's a diverse set of issues and a diverse population that ends up in these situations. So I'm not going to act like I know all of their problems. But for starters, that's one barrier that we could pull out of the way of these people who are on the street. Because for even if it's only a small percentage of that population, if someone who has the capacity and has the desire to say, hey, I want to turn my life around, I want to get off the street, I want to stop drinking or doing drugs, or whatever it was that put them in that scenario, and they have the ability to work, which some of them I would assume do. Well, if there was no minimum wage, they would actually have an opportunity to enter the workforce, right? I mean, even our business, if someone came to us and said, hey, I'd come clean up the shop for $5 an hour a couple times a week, that'd only be $20 every couple of days. That might be an expense that we're willing to pay. It's a good deal for us, and it's a good deal for that individual, because now, hey, they're starting to earn an income, they're starting to build a resume. So now, if this is among other things that they're doing to get cleaned up, get their feet underneath them, and they start to build some skill, as well as start to build a referral network, then I might go, hey, you've done such a good job. I'm so impressed with the progress that you've made from, hey, coming out from the street, coming to work for us. I've got a friend who's willing to hire you for your services. Now they've doubled their income, and they're cleaning up a few places, and then they really get cleaned up. They're really doing a good job. Their wind is in their sails, and they look to take on a job that's maybe a higher skill set. And now they can use us as a referral, and I can say, yeah, they were trustworthy. I was really impressed at how they came in. They were looking to work hard. All those things. So all that being said, the main point with this idea is that the minimum wage is a barrier for entry to people on the lowest rungs of the ladder when it comes to the labor market, right? People who are high skilled workers, they're not affected by the minimum wage at all. Or high skilled in any industry, tech or in the construction industry, whatever it is. People whose salaries and wages are well above the minimum wage never think that, hey, if I'm just entering the workforce and I have very little or no skill, well, getting a job is a way to get that skill, get that experience that I could build upon to enter the next stage of life. So let's take those barriers out of the way. Let's make it as easy to work as possible. So now, boom, we're getting people off the street. We're getting more people employed. Again, not everyone. I'm not saying that this would apply to everyone, but that's at least one percentage of that population that would be able to go to work. So there you go. If I was looking for a day, number one, we're getting rid of the minimum wage. Number two is abolishing all zoning restrictions and construction codes. So first off, the city of Seattle, if you look at a map breakdown of the amount of real estate that's designated for single family homes, I did a rough kind of very, very rough, at a time when this idea came to mind. And it was somewhere in the neighborhood, and I may be way off base here, right? Someone who knows the actual has looked into the data, but having just looked at the map, I was like, man, it looks like something like 80 to 90% of the city is single family home, zoned for single family home. And let's just say I'm wrong, like way wrong, completely off base. Let's say it's like 50%. Okay, so 50% of the city is zoned for homes. This is one of the fastest growing cities in the last, couple of decades. Imagine if Manhattan had been zoned for single family homes, as people were arriving on Ellis Island by the boatloads, coming to the new free world, and they said no, 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 sorry guys, um, we're not going to build any high rises or skyscrapers or anything like that, because the people who live here not only want to keep their own dwelling the way it is, but they want their neighbors, if they sell their home and someone were to buy it, they only want that person who's going to buy it to be able to keep it in the same dimension that it currently exists, right? So why do I bring that up? Because again, we have a homeless problem, and part of any homeless problem is a limited supply of dwellings, right? I'm not going to say that's the only part of it, or assign, percentages to how big of an issue it is. But it's just very, very simple economics that the lower the supply of dwelling units that there are, the higher the demand, the higher the price, right? So you have all these, good high paying jobs in this area. They're going to price many, many people out of the market from being able to afford housing. And so the way that you get these people housed is not to have the government build tiny homes or tent cities, or force low income people into high rise, nice brand new apartments or anything like that. Is just, if you just blow the supply off the charts, the demand is going to go down, the price is going to go down. It's going to become more affordable for people from all walks of life. But then you're also, again, and we're just talking about those bottom rungs, you're going to have a lot more discount dwelling units available, because they're not so high in demand, that these tiny little pods wouldn't go for $800-900, $1,200 a month. They might go for $400 a month, and now that's $300 a month, and that's something maybe that a person, again, who's having a rough time, who's hard out on their luck, might be able, with some services or some charity, or again, just starting to earn an income, might be able to get into those types of dwelling units. So that's why, and just as a little caveat, I guess I won't go way into it, but I saw a visual, it was, I think, through Reason TV. They had a visual of the construction code maybe a few decades ago, and then where it is today in paper. There was like a stack of paper. Hey, this was the code a few decades ago, and this is the code now, and just a giant in reams of paper. And so then there again, if you were to release the restrictions of the zoning laws, and now you have a bunch of builders and developers coming in to create more and more and more supply, housing gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Another thing you would do to facilitate that is to release the restrictions of construction codes, because again, these professionals, they know how to build. It's a well refined industry. People know how to do it. There's all kinds of third party certifications. You don't need, in addition to that, a bunch of red tape and paperwork. And I'm maybe making it sound simpler than it is, but even our own company went to execute just a pretty small project, just building a single family home, and you would be shocked at the amount of restrictions and red tape that just slows down the process. And anytime you slow down the process, that's adding an expense. So now you're making it more expensive to build, which then that trickles down to the consumer and makes it more expensive to purchase or rent that dwelling. And again, just in a very small project, something that has been delayed at least a calendar year, if not more, simply because of the compliance that we have to participate in with the city, with the government. And yeah, just all sorts of restrictions that slow down that building process. So step one, let's get rid of the minimum wage. Let's allow people to enter into the workforce no matter where they're at skill wise. Number two, let's get rid of zoning restrictions, throw the construction code out the window. We'll still expect professionals to do a good job, but they'd probably even do a better job if their hands weren't tied behind their back and had to jump on one foot in order to get through a building project. So that's number two. Now we have people entering the workforce. It's cheaper to buy a home. Wow, there's a lot less people on the street. And then number three would be enforcing the law, right? And by that, I just mean the amount of violence and repeat violent offenders that these documentaries pointed out, and we've even seen firsthand. My own family has had interactions with these people, and seen violent things happen and seen these people get arrested and then put back out on the street the same day. This is a very common thing that we hear from SPD officers and friends who've had been involved in violent altercations. So at that point, once you've taken away some of the hurdles for people to be making the right choices, hey, there's vast opportunities for employment, there's vast opportunities to be in an affordable dwelling unit. Well, then we have to start enforcing the law, and that just simply, like, again, let's focus on the important stuff. If people are committing violent acts to other people, they should be persecuted on the law. There should be some justice, and doled out one way or another, and they shouldn't be allowed to walk the street among us if they're a danger to society, right? And so whatever the proper resolution of that is, I'm cool with, and I'm open to that. But we just have to keep the streets safe, and that would ease up a lot of the problems that we've seen, and that would probably just be the beginning, right? So if I waved a magic wand and those things were put into practice, that would just take some of the low-hanging fruit away, and then you start the really hard work of everything beyond that. So maybe I rambled on a bit, but had a pretty busy day today between teaching jiu-jitsu and going to a wrestling class and then jumping on a boat in Lake Washington in the evening. So definitely used up the whole gas tank today, and just, again, wanted to share some thoughts on what it would take to start to clean up a city like Seattle. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Would love to hear any thoughts or feedback. And yeah, have a great evening, y'all. Catch you guys tomorrow.